back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Friday, January 3rd. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. I hope everybody had a good New Year's. This is the first broadcast for this show in 2025. So we are going to preview all the matchups for this weekend in the NFL and also take a look at how the first two rounds in the college football playoff went as well. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the biggest game in the NFL, and that will end off the regular season, and that is between the 14-2 Detroit Lions and the 14-2 Minnesota Vikings, and that is the battle for the NFC North. So we'll get into all the implications that go along with that, how these two teams stack up against each other in just a second. We'll also preview the games tomorrow. We got two AFC North matchups. So the AFC North will showcase itself on Saturday, I guess, for Hard Knocks, because Hard Knocks covered the entire AFC North. Still got to watch that. But we'll talk about those two games tomorrow, the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens, and the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll get into that. And like I said, third part of the show, we'll recap the first two rounds of the college football playoff, how those games went, and how the bracket currently stands. And then the final two segments, we'll take a look at the early slate of games for Week 18, as well as, in the final part of the show, the late slate of games of Week 18. So football, we are closer to the end than we are to the beginning. And that's how fast football season goes. I don't know how many times I say it. I say it all the time. So, yeah, let's get into the first topic now, which is talking about the Lions-Vikings game for Sunday night, which will decide the number 1 seed and the number 5 seed. That's right. So, we are going to see a team that has 14 wins be a wild card team, which I don't think has ever happened. And if it has, it's very, very rare. But you can make the argument that these are the two best teams in football. We'll see how this game goes. Next week I'll do power rankings, of course. But the Vikings have been a surprise this year. We'll talk about them first. I said as I was, doing my standings predictions and schedule predictions, I put the Vikings at 6 wins. And I look like a fool right now because not only did they finish with a winning record, are they going to finish with a winning record, but they're either going to have 14 wins or 15 wins, depending on how this game goes on Sunday night. The main thing that I talked about was the quarterback play. How is the quarterback play going to be? Now, you had J.J. McCarthy get hurt and miss the entire season, and Sam Darnold stepped in, and Sam Darnold has done a fabulous job as a starting quarterback. He's a Pro Bowler. Got named to the Pro Bowl. And now the Vikings, could be possible that Sam Darnold gets a new contract from them, and he's a starting quarterback going forward. Now, the assessment of Sam Darnold this season is still incomplete. I want to see what he does in this game, and I want to see what he does in the playoffs. Now, if he plays poorly over the next couple of weeks, or depending on if the Vikings win or not, then maybe there should be some pause. But I think he has earned that next contract, and I think at this point, I think the Vikings have won 9 straight. The Vikings should give him that contract, and he should be their starting quarterback moving forward. Now, it's a whole different conversation on what they should do with J.J. McCarthy, because the Vikings drafted him, and he was looked at as the future. Sam Darnold was looked at as the bridge guy. But now, the way Sam Darnold is playing, he might be your guy moving forward. And then you have to make a decision on what you're going to do with McCarthy, whether you're going to keep him or, there are teams out there that might want him, because there's always teams that need quarterbacks. It's going to be interesting to see what the Vikings do in the offseason, but they're here right now. They are one of the most well-rounded teams in the NFL. Both defensively and offensively, they are a well-balanced team. This defense has come a long way since a couple years ago when they lost to the Giants in the playoff game. Brian Flores has done a nice job with this defense. It's really turned it around, and they're a solid unit. And then offensively, they got playmakers all over the place. Jordan Addison has looked good in year 2. They got T.J. Hawkinson back. Aaron Jones, one of the many running backs that changed teams this offseason. He's played well for them. And then, of course, you have the best wide receiver in the NFL in Justin Jefferson. And then Sam Darnold, has played really well with all the tools around him. Now, going into this game, we move on to the Lions. They're coming into their house. And the Lions and the Vikings, they played a very entertaining game earlier this season. The Vikings were up, Lions came back, and they ended up winning on a Jake Bates go-ahead field goal late in the game. Now, the Lions, they've been the number 1 seed for a while this year. In the beginning of the year, the Vikings, they were undefeated. Lions knocked them off, gave them their first loss. And then the Lions kind of took over the number 1 seed, took over the division, and now here we are. Like I said earlier, this is arguably the 2 best teams in the NFL. The Lions are coming in banged up, though. They showed the graphic on the Monday night broadcast against the 49ers, all the injuries that they're dealing with on defense. And that's what worries me having to go into this game, is being shorthanded there. Because the Vikings, I just talked about their offense, they could take advantage of that. And that concerns me. However, the Lions' offense is still playing really well, playing at a high level these last couple of weeks. The 49ers, they came out, they played well offensively, but the Lions, they kept up with them. And they were ultimately able to get the win. They got a couple of turnovers off of Brock Purdy. And like I said, they took advantage of it. I don't think there were any punts in that game. I have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure nobody punted. The punters basically had the night off. Even without David Montgomery, you still have Jahmyr Gibbs, who had a big game on Monday. And he did have a big touchdown run in the first meeting between these two teams. So the running game is going to be fine. They could get David Montgomery back. We'll have to see. And obviously, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown. Sam Laporta had a nice game on Monday against the 49ers. Jameson Williams, I talked about him before the season started. He could be someone that has a better year, and he has. He has played a big factor in this offense as well. And Jared Goff, he's played at an MVP level. Got off to a little bit of a slow start, but he has put together yet another solid season as a starting quarterback for the Lions. I think this is going to be a shootout. I think both offenses are going to move the ball, and it could come down to a game-winning field goal. It's a very tough game to pick because, again, both teams have played extremely well this season. And I think in terms of who deserves the bye week more, I mean, I would say it's the Lions just because of the injuries. The Lions need this game just because you can have a week off and maybe you get some of these guys back on defense. You get David Montgomery back. And then, you're almost whole if you can get some of these players back. And who knows, if they can make it all the way to the Super Bowl, maybe you get Aiden Hutchinson back. I hope so, because then my prediction would be right. Because have the Lions go into the Super Bowl to face off against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs, they clinched home field advantage. The Lions, they could either be the number 1 seed or they could be the 5. That's how much that's at stake with this game. And you knew right away, before the Week 18 schedule came out, to see who was playing when, that this game was going to be the Sunday night game. You just knew it. There was no other game that was going to match up to it. There's still other things that haven't been decided yet. We'll talk about the games tomorrow, of course, and the implications with those games. The AFC North doubleheader. The NFC South hasn't been decided yet. This game has major implications. Now, who do I think is going to win? It's really tough. The Lions are banged up. The Vikings, like I said, they could take advantage of that. It's hard for me not to pick the Lions. It really is a toss-up for me. I am gonna lean towards the Lions in this game. They're at home. That crowd is going to be electric. I think it's going to be a shootout, and I think the Lions will make enough plays where they win a close one, and they squeak by. But it will not surprise me if the Vikings win. And if the Vikings win, so be it, because the Lions could beat anybody. If they got to go on the road, so be it. But I'm going to lean towards the Lions in this game. I don't feel great about it just because they're banged up on defense. And, the Vikings, they want to avenge that loss. It's been a while since these two teams faced off against each other. So we'll have to wait and see. But this is going to be a great game. It could be a 34-31 game, something like that. But I'll take the Lions in a win here, in a close win. But let me know what you guys think about this game. Who do you think wins? Let me know in the comments. So we're going to take our first break of the show now. And then when we come back, we will discuss the games that are on tomorrow. We'll talk about the AFC North matchups. The Browns taking on the Ravens and the Steelers taking on the Bengals. So with that being said, stick around. And we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the games tomorrow. Both games dealing with the AFC North. So let's get into that. So the first game to start us off is the Browns and the Ravens. Now, the AFC North has not been finalized yet. The Ravens with the win, they would clinch it. And I fully expect them to do that. The Browns are not very good. Very disappointing season for them. I thought they would be better. I think a lot of people thought that. But that was not the case. A lot of that has to do with the quarterback play. Pretty much the polar opposite of what happened last year. Browns went through 5 different starting quarterbacks. They finished with, I think, 11 wins. 10 or 11 wins, I forget. They rode the magic carpet of Joe Flacco into the playoffs and lost to the Texans. This year, Deshaun Watson comes back, does not play well, ends up getting hurt. Jameis Winston steps in and, did provide a spark for the offense. I mean, the last time the Ravens and Browns faced off, I was there in Cleveland, and Jameis Winston won the game for the Browns. That go-ahead touchdown to Cedric Tillman. But Jameis kind of had some of those Jameis games where, the Broncos game was a perfect example of that, where he threw for a ton of yards, but he also threw a couple of pick sixes in the game. And then against the Chiefs, he was bad, and they benched him for DTR, and DTR has not been good. And, yeah, I expect the Browns to get blown out in this game. It's just been a disappointing season for them. And right now, they're in a position where they could take a quarterback. Right now, how the NFL draft order is set up, I think they have the 3rd overall pick. So they could take one of these top 2 quarterbacks. They've, maneuvered and changed up Deshaun Watson's contract, and which is the right thing to do, because it's just he has not lived up to that contract at all. And now they could be bringing in more competition if they decide to take a quarterback, which I think they will, because the Deshaun Watson contract, like I said, has not worked out. And they need to figure something out there, because he's been hurt these last 2 years. And even before he got hurt, he was not playing well. So, yeah, it's been a disaster of a season. But, yeah, so they'll be taking on the Ravens. Ravens get the win. They'll clinch the AFC North, and I fully expect them to do that. The Ravens got off to a little bit of a slow start. They lost that game to the Raiders. They started off 0-2. They lost to the Chiefs in week 1, but they have been very impressive offensively. Defensively, their pass defense has not been good. It's been starting to play a little bit better as of late, and they're going to need their defense to step up in the playoffs. But this offense is fun to watch with Lamar Jackson, with Derrick Henry. That MVP race, look, Josh Allen had a lot of big games this year, towards the second half of the year here. But that MVP race is very close. Now, he might still end up getting it, but Lamar Jackson has had a solid year. As good of a year as Josh Allen, if not better. And he's going to need to step up in the playoffs this year. Last year, they had the number 1 seed. You got the win in the second round, but you get to the championship game, and that offense did not show up against the Chiefs. Had a couple of turnovers, and that kind of dictated the game. So, winning on Saturday, clinching that division, is one step towards getting back to where they were last year. Now, they're not going to be the number 1 seed. They're going to have to go on the road again. They're going to have to play the Bills in Buffalo if they got to face off against them. And then The Chiefs will probably advance, so then you're going to have to deal with them again. It's going to be different this year, though, just because you have Derrick Henry. Now, me saying it's going to be different does not mean they're going to win. I'm just saying that you got another element to your team that you didn't have last year, and that's Derrick Henry, who's been out of this world this year. Another running back that changed teams. So, looking at this game, though, against the Browns, I think they should run away with it. I don't expect the Browns to score a lot of points. You know, I think they only kicked a field goal against Tyler Huntley and the Dolphins, and now they got to play the Ravens in their home stadium. The Ravens know what's at stake here. I really don't expect the Browns to be that competitive. The line is 17.5. It's a very big number, but I think the Ravens should win by 3 scores, at least. I don't anticipate the Browns to keep up with them. DTR has not played well. Actually, the line is now gone to 20. And my spread pool is at 17. So, I'm taking the Ravens. I think they should cover. It's a big spread. It's a very big spread. This might be the biggest spread of the year. But I think that the Ravens should cover. They'll definitely win, but covering they might not be covering till the fourth quarter. So Ravens win and they'll clinch the AFC North. So now that leaves the second game. The Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers have lost 3 straight. It looked like maybe they were on their way to winning this division and hosting a home playoff game. That's not the case here. They could possibly be the 6th seed by the end of this week if they lose. So then they would have to play, they'd have to play the Ravens for a third time. So they're trying to find that magic that they had before the 3-game losing streak. But it's just, team's not been playing well. And they've been going against, really it's because they've been going against better competition. Going up against 3 Super Bowl contenders. I mean, they did not belong on the same field as the Chiefs last week. That was an embarrassment. The defense let Patrick Mahomes do whatever he wanted. They could not really get any pressure on him. And Russell Wilson and that offense turned the ball over. And they really couldn't get anything going. Now, against the Bengals, they put up 44 points against them. They're going to be able to move the ball against this defense. But it's going to be up to their defense to try to stop Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense, which is rolling right now. They were 4-8. It looked like their season was pretty much over. But for the moment, their season is still alive. They still have a chance. But they're going to need some help. They need to win, and they need the Dolphins and the Broncos to both lose. Now, the Dolphins are going to be starting Tyler Huntley, most likely. Doesn't seem like Tua is going to play. Now, if Tua plays, you like the Dolphins' chances of winning that game. Now, the Dolphins could still win just because they're playing the Jets, and the Jets are not very good. But who knows? And then when it comes to the Broncos and Chiefs game, the Chiefs are resting their starters. But, there's no guarantee that the Broncos win this game. That's coming up on Sunday. We'll have to wait and see. But when it comes to the Bengals and Steelers game, I think the Bengals offense is going to be able to move the ball at will. Joe Burrow is going to have another big game, and he's going to have to. This team is in playoff mode right now to try to get in. On Saturday, I think it was his 9th game where he threw at least 250 yards, and he had 3 touchdowns. I think that's what the stat was, which is an incredible stat, because that just shows you how good of a season he's had despite the Bengals record. And if the Bengals record was better, you could make the case he's the MVP. But because of the Bengals record and that they're probably not going to make the playoffs, he's not going to get it. but you never know. I would love to see the Bengals make it because, to see Joe Burrow and that offense in the playoffs makes the playoffs better. And we would see Joe Burrow and the Bengals take on Josh Allen and the Bills in the first round, which, sign me up for that. But if we get the Broncos and the Bills, so be it. The Broncos, they kind of deserve it. I shouldn't say kind of. They do deserve it. Sean Payton's done a nice job turning that team around. But I'm going to take the Bengals to win Saturday and at least, put them in a position where if the other two teams lose, then they're in. I think they at least win on Saturday because I don't like what I'm seeing from the Steelers' offense as of late. I think going up against the Bengals, they'll be able to move the ball better. But I just think the Bengals are in that mode right now. And, hey, if they make the playoffs, that would be great for them. But they're at least going to go out on a high note and finish over 500. So I'm going to take them to win this game. I don't think it's going to be 44-38. I think maybe you see like a 28-24 game, something like that. I mean, if we get 44-38 again, okay, sign me up for it. I'll take an offensive game like that again, but I don't think we're going to get that. So the Bengals win. They improve to 9-8. Steelers, depending on what happens with the Chargers in the Raiders game, which I think the Chargers should win that, they would drop down to the 6th seed. So this is a team that would have gone from being the number 3 seed to now possibly the number 6 seed, based off of what I've said so far. And that is something that Steelers fans definitely don't want to hear. So I got the Ravens winning and the Bengals winning. Let me know what you guys think about these two games. Who do you think wins? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again, tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So we're going to change things up when we come back. We are going to talk about what has happened in the college football playoffs so far and how everything currently stands after the first 2 rounds going into the semifinals. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about how the first 2 rounds in the college football playoff went, as well as talking about who's in the semifinals and where the college football playoff currently stands now. Season's almost over. So there definitely was a lot of controversy after the first round just because pretty much all the games were not close. And you had the outcry of, oh, yeah, this is what happens when you expand the playoffs. You don't get competitive games. But I did bring this up at some point that we've had national championship games that were blowouts. I mean, go back to a couple years ago. Brought this up. TCU losing to Georgia. Georgia put up 60 points against them. So it's not like we've never... Now, the games that we saw these first two rounds were not to that level, but still, it happens. And I think the second round was better. But yeah, I mean, pretty much you had blowouts. The Clemson-Texas game was probably the best game out of the 4 games in the first round. I know Indiana ended up losing by 10, but that game really wasn't close. They put up 14 points in the fourth quarter, so they ended up losing 27-17, so their season ended up ending against Notre Dame. But, props to them for getting to this point. Obviously, Hoosier fans wanted to see them go further, but yeah, it wasn't going to happen against Notre Dame. And then SMU Penn State, I had some friends there, and they said the atmosphere was unbelievable. And we went to Ohio State earlier in the year, but this topped that. And I would have loved to have been there in person, all over SMU. There were 2 pick sixes in this game. I think that's how the game... Yeah, that's what opened up the scoring. Yeah, back-to-back pick sixes by Penn State. That's what got them out to a 14-0 lead. But yeah, that game just... SMU was just never in it. They got outscored 28-0 in the first half. Got some points on the board at the end. Final score ended up being 38-10. Clemson and Texas, like I said, that was probably the best game of the first round. That ended up being 38-24. And they moved on. And Ohio State, final game of the first round, 42-17 over Tennessee. Now, I do want to talk about Ohio State because they dominated against Oregon on Wednesday. And we saw what happened to them the last week of the regular season, rivalry week against Michigan. And it was a bad look for them because Michigan, planted the flag and there was that whole fight, and it was an ugly scene there. And they got heavily criticized for how that game went. But the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, they have come out and they look like the best team that's remaining. And they beat the best team in Oregon. And that was the team that I thought was probably going to win the whole thing. I mean, most people probably lean towards Oregon winning it, but right now, with how everything has played out and the teams that are left, it could be Ohio State that wins the whole thing. As of right now, that's how I look at it, because they jumped out to a huge lead on Oregon. They were up 24-0 at one point. They got it up to 34-0. And then, Oregon scored a few touchdowns, but it was too little too late. They ended up losing 41-21. I thought that was going to be the best game of the round, of the second round. That ended up not happening. But yeah, Ohio State picks up the win. Will Howard, 319 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Threw for over 300 yards against Tennessee, 2 touchdowns and a pick. So he has looked really good. I mean, compared to how he looked against Michigan, got hurt in that game, he had 175 yards passing, a touchdown, and 2 picks. He has played really well. Like I said, right now, you got to lean towards Ohio State, I think, as a team that could win it all. And then for the rest of the games in the second round, probably the best game, which was surprising, was Texas and Arizona State. That was the best game. Might have been the best game of the whole playoff so far. Actually, yeah. No, it was. Late in the game, because this ended up going into double overtime. So Texas was up 24-8. And at that point, I thought, all right, this game's probably over. But then Arizona State scores a touchdown. They go for it on 4th and 2, and you had Scatabo throw they did a trick play. Scatabo ended up throwing a 42-yard touchdown pass, which I don't know how that ball hung up there. I don't know how, Texas couldn't bat it down or something or pick it off, but ends up getting caught for a touchdown. And then they go for 2, they get it. And then Quinn Ewers throws a pick. And then that leads to another touchdown by Arizona State. And they go for 2, they don't get it, but then there was a penalty on the play, defensive holding, and then Scatabo ends up scoring the 2-point conversion to tie the game. Texas, 2 missed field goals before the end of the fourth quarter. They could have won this game in regulation, but their kicker missed 2 field goals. So they go into overtime. Arizona State scores a touchdown, but then Texas answers. And then Texas scores a touchdown. They get the 2-point conversion. And then Arizona State, Sam Levitt throws a pick. And that's how the game ends. Quinn Ewers, 3 touchdowns in this game and the pick. There was also a safety in this game as well, which could have led to 7 points. But Quinn Ewers jumped on the ball, and it ended up being a safety. But yeah, 322 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Matthew Golden, 7 receptions for 149 yards and a touchdown. Gunnar Helm, the tight end, 3 receptions for 56 yards and a touchdown. And then for the Sun Devils, Sam Levitt, he went 24 of 46 for 222 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. Like I said, Cam Scatabo, 42-yard touchdown pass. And he had a big game on the ground, 30 carries for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also was their leading receiver, 99 yards receiving. And then, of course, Malik McClain, he had the touchdown that Scatabo ended up throwing to him. And, yeah, I mean, that was a good showing by the Sun Devils out of the Mountain West. They gave Texas all they could handle, but Texas ultimately pulled out the win, and they move on. So that was tough. I wanted to see the Sun Devils pull off the upset, but now for the naysayers that are saying that this bracket is not the way to go, this game shows that, hey, we can get competitive games with, the expansion now, with more teams in it. Sun Devils had a chance, but they came up a little bit short. And then the first game to actually start off the second round, we had Penn State and Boise State. Boise State had some missed opportunities there. They had a touchdown that got called back, and that led to a missed field goal. They had a chance in this game. They actually had a missed field goal to start off the game as well. But they did hang around for a little bit. It was 17-14 at one point, but then Penn State pulled away. After the missed field goal, Penn State ended up making it 31-14. Yeah, and then back-to-back interceptions for Boise State on back-to-back drives. They end up losing 31-14. Aston Genty, 30 carries for 104 yards. I mean, look, he played against a very good defense, but he was still able to get over 100 yards. And he's going to be a good player in the NFL. If he ends up in the right situation, he is going to be a problem in the NFL. And I hope he is. But ultimately, look, this just came down to Penn State was the better team. And they move on. So Boise State's season has come to an end. And then finally, Notre Dame defeated Georgia 23-10. Georgia, no Carson Beck in this game. They had to start Gunnar Stockton. Made some good throws, but ultimately, look, they were kind of shorthanded without their starting quarterback. They only put up 10 points. Notre Dame wins and moves on. And now we go to the bracket. You got Texas and Ohio State going up against each other, and then you got Penn State and Notre Dame. And these games will be played next week. So next Thursday at 7:30, p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. You have Penn State and Notre Dame. And then Friday, January 10th, at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, you have Texas and Ohio State. So that's the Final Four for the college football playoff. And like I said, I like Ohio State. Right now, the way they're playing, I like them to win the whole thing. But who knows? What I say, the opposite's probably going to happen. But both good games. Notre Dame has a good defense, so I'm curious to see. Well, both Penn State and Notre Dame have good defenses, so I'm curious to see how that game goes. Maybe we see an Ohio State-Penn State national championship game. That would be something. To see those teams go at it. I would like to see that happen, but right now, the way the playoffs have gone, the way Ohio State is playing, I think they're going to win the whole thing. I keep saying it, but that's how I feel at this moment. Texas is a good team. I know people have some issues with Quinn Ewers, and we'll see what ends up happening at the end of this year, because Arch Manning is waiting in the wings, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, no. Overall, how the playoffs have gone, obviously you'd want to see more of the games be more competitive, but it is what it is. I think in the second round, games definitely were better, especially, like I said, the Sun Devils in Texas. I don't think anybody really expected that, but, there could be some tweaking with this new format at the end of the year. This is a trial run, so, this is not going anywhere. But, yeah, now we're at the Final Four, and then national championship game is on the 20th, I believe. So we'll see who ends up playing in that. But right now, I'm kind of rooting for Penn State, Ohio State in the national championship game. I would sign me up for that. But let me know what you guys think about the game so far. What were your takeaways from them? Let me know in the comments. Do you like the playoff format? Do you not like it? Let me know. So we are going to take our next break, and then when we come back, we will talk about the early slate of games in the NFL on Sunday, so make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to now preview the early slate of games for the final week of the regular season, Week 18 in the NFL. And to get us started off, we got the 4-12 Chicago Bears taking on the 11-5 Green Bay Packers. Packers are 10-point favorites in this game. Now, something that hasn't been finalized yet, similar to the AFC, is the wild cards positionings. So right now, I mean, whoever loses the Lions-Vikings game is going to be the top wild card team. But you also have the Commanders, who have clinched the playoff spot, and the Packers, who also have clinched the playoff spot. So right now, the Packers are the 7th seed. Commanders are the 6th. Now, depending on what happens in these two games, if the Packers beat the Bears and the Commanders lose, then the Packers will get the 6th seed. Commanders are taking on Dallas. Right now, I would lean towards the Commanders winning, Packers winning, so the Packers would end up being the 7th seed. And they're probably taking on, well, no, they will be taking on the Philadelphia Eagles if that's the case. So, yeah, right now, that's how I see it. I got the Packers winning against the Bears. The Bears have just been a huge disappointment this year. I thought they were going to finish with a better record, but ultimately came down to coaching, had a rookie quarterback, The protection was not there. They need to bring in the right regime for this team. And I do think that if the Bears can get the head coach right, you bring in an offensive-minded head coach, and, they have a good defense. I mean, the defense has kind of went south since they let go of Matt Eberflus, but, I mean, it was good. I mean, I guess if you want to call it good, last week against the Seahawks in that great Thursday night game that we had the pleasure of watching. Other than that, though, the defense has gotten shredded since they let Matt Eberflus go. So, yeah, if they can get the head coach right, I think this could be a team that bounces back next year because they have a lot of talent. But, yeah, it's just a combination of a lot of things led to the season that they've had. And, Troy Aikman brought this up when they took on the Vikings on that Monday night a few weeks ago. What would have happened if that Hail Mary against the Commanders didn't succeed and the Commanders win that game at the end? How would the Bears season have gone? We'll never know. But they were 4-2 at that point. They were about to be 5-2. Things could have changed, but it's a what-if game that we're playing there. So, yeah, I think they're going to end up losing this game here. The Packers, that game against the Vikings kind of told me some things about them. I mean, maybe they turn it up in the playoffs, but that game didn't sit right with me. They went 0-4 against the Vikings and the Lions this year. That doesn't sit well with me. It just doesn't. Because those are the teams that you're going to have to play in the playoffs. And you also, if everything stays the same, you'll be taking on the Eagles again, and you lost to the Eagles. Now, pretty much all the games that they played against those teams, other than, I guess, maybe the first Lions game, where Jordan Love wasn't 100% healthy, and the weather was bad. I mean, they've been in all those games. It's just they fall short. I mean, I guess you can make the argument with the game on Sunday against the Vikings. They really were never in it. Got close at the end. If their defense could have got a stop, then they could have got the ball back, and who knows. But they got off to a very slow start in that game. They were playing catch-up, and they ended up losing the game by 2. And even when Jordan Love came back the first time against the Vikings, the first game, they were getting blown out. Packers had a late comeback, but they fell a little bit short. So, yeah, it's just, and then you lose both games to the Lions. So, I don't feel confident about Green Bay going into the playoffs right now because of these slow starts that they get off to. Now, playoffs are a different animal. They could turn it up. Because I feel like on Sunday, they really tried to establish a run with Josh Jacobs. Now, Josh Jacobs has been great all year, but you need Jordan Love in this passing game to get it going. Now, they were missing Christian Watson, so that did hurt. You hope to get him back. But Jordan Love in this passing game has got to get it going. Against the Saints, they really didn't have to do too much because the Saints were very shorthanded. But now when you go up against these playoff teams, you gotta be balanced. You gotta be able to run the football and throw it. Can't be one-dimensional. So we'll have to see going into the playoffs. Anthony Manzano in the chat, good to hear from you. Question, if both the Lions and Vikings end up with the same record at the end of the season, who gets the NFC North championship? Well, they're going to be facing off this week. So whoever loses, is going to be a wild card team, and the winner is going to be the number 1 seed. Now, if there ends up being a tie, I mean, does it still go? I guess it still goes to the Lions, right? Because the Lions have the better divisional record. Actually, well, don't they have the same divisional record? Well, the Vikings lost to the Lions, so I guess, yeah, no, it would still go to the Lions. I think. That makes sense to me. So, yeah, Vikings lose, or vice versa, Lions lose, then one gets the 5 and one gets the number 1. That's what I'm asking. If they split the season series, then what happens? Well, if the Lions win, they're going to have a better record than the Vikings. They're both tied with the same record right now. the Lions win, or if the Vikings win, they're going to be one game better than them, than the opposition. So they can't finish with the same record. They're both. I mean, unless they tie, which I don't think is going to happen. Because right now, Lions have a better conference record by one game. They have a better divisional record. So if they end up tying, it's still going to go to the Lions. But yeah, both teams are 14-2. So one team wins. Whoever wins, they're going to be the 1 seed and win the NFC North, and the other team is going to be the 5. So hope that cleared it up the way I explained it. But anyways, all right. So I got the Packers winning. They're 10-point favorites. I think they should win by a couple of scores. The Bears, I think, are just packing it in. This season has been a disappointment for them. So then we move on to the Eagles and the Giants. Eagles are 3-point favorites. They'll be resting their starters. Saquon Barkley will not break Eric Dickerson's rushing record. About 100 yards away from it. Yeah, I can't wait for the Giants season to be over. I think even with the Eagles backups, I think they should be able to beat the Giants starters. I mean, I don't know what the Colts were doing last week. That was very telling about their defense, how bad their defense really is with that performance that they put on. Look, if the Giants win this game, they only hurt themselves with the draft positioning. Because this is a team that does need a high draft pick. But I guess, if they win, good for the players, good for the coaching staff. But for the fans, they're just not happy. They are not happy. But yeah, whether it's Kenny Pickett, whether it's Tanner McKee, I do think that the Eagles' backups will beat the Giants starters. The Giants are the worst team in football. Even with that win last week, they're still the worst team in football in my eyes. So I'm going to take the Eagles to win, and I think they cover the spread. So we'll talk about the NFC South game matchups. So the Panthers are taking on the Falcons. Saints are taking on the Bucks. Bucks are 13.5-point favorites. The Falcons are 8-point favorites. The Buccaneers blew out the Panthers. Chuba Hubbard got hurt, and the Panthers missed him because Bryce Young just had to keep throwing it, and they became one-dimensional. And, they just couldn't keep up with the Bucks offense. The Bucks are rolling right now, and I think they're going to roll right into the playoffs. They just need to win, and they're in. Now, the Falcons, they need the Bucks to somehow lose to the Saints, who are still shorthanded, and they need to beat the Panthers. I think both teams will win, and I think the Falcons will just miss out on the playoffs. I like what I saw from Michael Penix on Sunday night. Had some big throws, and this was just his second career NFL start, and it was on primetime, and at times he looked good. So, we'll see what happens next year, how he plays over the course of a full season, because, now he's the starter going forward. Kirk Cousins, we'll see what they do with him. If they cut him, they trade him, whatever they decide to do, we'll have to wait and see on that. But Michael Penix is the starter going forward. But yeah, I think the Falcons win. 8 is a lot of points. It is a lot of points, but I think with the Panthers missing Chuba Hubbard, that, like I said, that made him one-dimensional. I think the Falcons should be able to win and cover the number, but we'll have to wait and see. Bucks, 13.5 points against the shorthanded Saints. I think they should win and cover that. That, again, big number. But I think if it's Spencer Rattler again, I think the Bucks should be able to win and cover. Because I don't think Derek Carr is going to play. Yeah, so he didn't practice on Thursday. There was maybe a small chance that he comes back, but I think the Saints should hold him out. Why risk more injury to him if he's able to play? I would sit him for this game. The Saints are not going anywhere. It's a meaningless game for them. So, yeah, I think the Bucks win, Falcons win, like I said. Got the Commanders and the Cowboys. Cowboys are 6.5-point underdogs. They got blown out by the Eagles. Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee had their way with that defense. I mean, the Commanders still need this game just to, cement themselves as the 6th seed. So I think they should win and cover. Cowboys don't have CeeDee Lamb in this game. They actually cut Ezekiel Elliott, so that second stint with the Cowboys ended pretty quickly. So yeah, I'm gonna take the Commanders to win and cover. Colts and Jaguars, I really don't know what to do with this game. Colts are 4.5-point favorites. I mean, they got embarrassed by the Giants last week, so I'm gonna say that they bounce back, get the win, and get to 8-9 to finish off the year. I had them at 9 wins before the year started, so they finish around that. So I'll take them in this game over the Jags. Jags, a forgettable year for them. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. was a bright spot for this team, but just very disappointing year. They'll probably be looking for a new head coach. Then you got the Bills and the Patriots. The Bills, I think, will rest their or maybe they'll play a series or two. That's the problem with Week 18 is for some games you don't know if their starters are going to play or if they're going to sit them or if they're going to play a couple series. I don't know, but yeah, I guess I lean towards the Bills against the Patriots backups. I mean, maybe Drake May picks up the win here in this game. Patriots got beat up in that game against the Chargers last week. I'll lean towards the Bills right now. Then you got the Titans and the Texans. Titans, not a good year for them, 3-13. They're going to be looking for a quarterback. Texans are probably resting their starters. They're pretty much locked into their playoff spot, the 4 seed, and they have the division wrapped up. But they have not looked good this year. I mean, I guess I don't know. I might lean towards the Texans in this game anyways, because last year Case Keenum beat the Titans on the road. So I might lean towards the Texans in this game to win and get to 10-7. So yeah, that's kind of how I see the early slate of games going. So I got the Packers, I got the Eagles, the Falcons, the Commanders, the Colts, the Bills, the Bucks, and the Texans. Again, subject to change. So when we come back from our next break, we're going to take our final break now. When we come back, we will then preview the games that, there's more playoff implications with the games that we have in the late slate. Well, really when it comes to the AFC playoff picture. So for one final time today, make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we are going to now get into previewing the remaining late slate of games for Week 18 in the NFL. So, got all the West teams playing, as well as the Jets and the Dolphins. That'll be played at 4:25 on Fox, or Eastern time on Fox. So when it comes to the NFC West, so the Rams have clinched that division They needed some teams to win based on strength of schedule, and they got that. So they are NFC West champs, and I thought they were going to be one of the wild card teams. I had them as a wild card team going into the year because I thought the 49ers would be the division champs, and the 49ers are going to finish with possibly 6 wins, depending on what happens in this game on Sunday against the Cardinals, because there will be no Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy got injured late in the game against the Lions, so he's not going to play. I think Josh Dobbs will be getting the start. So he'll be starting against his former team. But, the Rams are probably going to rest their starters. So I would lean towards Seattle getting the win there and finishing with 10 wins. And then when it comes to the Cardinals and the 49ers, that game is tough to pick with now Brock Purdy being out. Now, there's going to be no James Conner for the Cardinals after he put together a solid year. But Cardinals, I mean, this is something that we've seen before with them. You know, they were in a good position. They won 4 in a row. And then they came out of the bye week. And they are 1-5 in their last 6 games. Their only win came against the Patriots at home. And, yeah, it's just a disappointing end to their season. And, look, I think Kyler Murray's solid, but I do think there is some limitations to what you could do with him as your franchise quarterback. I don't think right now, I would say, if you were to ask me, do you think Kyler Murray will win a Super Bowl, I would tell you no. Now, that doesn't mean, me saying that are the Cardinals just going to completely, move off of him? I don't know. But we've seen this before with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals where they get off to these good starts and they're in a good position to do something and then they just fall flat. The last time they made the postseason, Kyler did not play well in that game. So, you got to wonder, maybe the Cardinals are having some internal discussions on, what we should do with, what they should do with Kyler. Right now I'd probably lean towards saying he's still going to be the starting quarterback next year. But, you got to wonder. Now this is another year where this team has fallen flat with him at the helm. And I don't know. But looking at this game, though, I think the Cardinals should win against the Niners with now Josh Dobbs starting. The 49ers have been a disappointment. They're at home. I think they should get the win. But, it wouldn't surprise me if the 49ers were able to pull off the upset. So, that one's kind of a toss-up for me. I'll say the Cardinals win, but don't feel great about it. Then we got the Rams and the Seahawks, like I said. Oh, actually, no, I went over that already. I said the Seahawks would win if they got the Rams backups playing. Jimmy Garoppolo going to be getting the start for the Rams there. So we'll see how that goes. Chargers and Raiders. Raiders are 4.5-point underdogs. That line's actually gone down. So I don't know what the Chargers plan on doing. They're pretty much... Well, I guess it all depends on what happens with the Steelers game. If the Steelers win, then the Chargers are pretty much locked into the 6th seed. But if the Steelers lose, then the Chargers have the opportunity, if they win on Sunday, then they'll be the 5. And based off of what I said in the second segment, the Chargers will be playing for the 5 seed because the Steelers beat them already this year. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but right now I would lean towards the Chargers getting the win there. Disappointing season for the Raiders. Bright spot for them, Brock Bowers, of course. But yeah, disappointing year for them. I don't know what they're gonna do in the draft. Do they maybe try to trade up, get a quarterback, or maybe they try to trade for Kirk Cousins? Who knows? The team is just not very good. They need a lot of help. They need, they They need help on offense. They need help on defense. I mean, they lost Devontae Adams. They let go of Josh Jacobs. They need to get more offensive firepower. And that starts with the quarterback position. And who knows what they're going to do with Antonio Pierce. Now, this team at the beginning of the year was 2-2. They beat the Ravens on the road. And you thought, okay, they're going to be like they were last year. A competitive team. Hang around in some games. And they have done that at times. But it's just, it's been a tough year for them. They've won 2 straight, though. They beat Jacksonville. They beat the Saints. So, at least they're, maybe, if they pull off an upset against the Chargers, they end on a high note. But, no, I think Raiders fans, they want them to lose and get the higher draft pick. But, yeah, so I like the Chargers to win. I think they're going to be playing their starters pretty much the whole game. So I like them to win and cover. And then finally, we have the Jets and the Dolphins. Now, it doesn't look like at the moment that Tua is going to play. We're going to see Tyler Huntley again. And look, they got the win against a bad football team in the Browns. And the Jets are a bad football team as well. So they could probably still get the win here. But it is possible that this could be Aaron Rodgers' last game. And he might retire. And it's something that will be a topic of conversation throughout the whole offseason. And recently, he talked about how these last 2 years in New York have been the best years of some of the best years of his life. Even though there's been a lot of stuff that's gone on. Last year with the injury, and then this just being a disaster of a year for the Jets. And not all of it is his fault. Now, is he part of the problem? Yeah, I've said that constantly. I don't think he's the main problem with the Jets season. I think they had some bigger issues. And that starts from up top down. What we've heard come out in certain reports with Woody Johnson, it's very troubling to hear, especially when you're kind of evaluating players based off of a Madden rating. And look, going into the year, I didn't think they were going to be. Well, I knew that coaching could be an issue. I knew coaching could be something that holds them back. And that's definitely been the case. They shouldn't have fired Robert Saleh, even though when it happened, he hasn't been good. But just promoting Jeff Ulbrich, that was not the move. Because he has been in way over his head. And it's been a very tough year for them. Another team that it's been tough. I had this team winning the division, making the playoffs. Now, I didn't have them going all the way to the Super Bowl like some people did. So, yeah, I know I got some weird looks in our production meeting when I picked them to win the AFC East, but it was based off of their talent and banking on Aaron Rodgers to come back, play at at an average level, the defense to play well. I just thought that the talent was going to block out some of the weaknesses that they had with the coaching staff. But that didn't happen. That did not happen. Rodgers got banged up this year. Started to play better towards the end here. Obviously, though, against Buffalo, that game was a disaster from start to finish. The Jets actually did move the ball, but they'd go for it on 4th down and just get stuffed or just wouldn't get it. Rodgers had a couple of interceptions. I don't think – they got tipped up in the air. Well, one of them did. Or actually, no, I think both of them were just tip passes. But either way, he threw 2 picks. And, yeah, it's been a forgettable year for the Jets. But if this is the last game for him, I would like to see him go out with a win. I actually will pick the Jets if Tyler Huntley does start. But the Dolphins need this game. If they win and the Broncos lose, then they're in. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. If Tua plays, I think the Dolphins win. If Tua doesn't play, I'm going to say the Jets actually get the win, and Aaron Rodgers goes out, if this is it, with the victory. Now, you're probably saying, you're crazy. Well, I mean, I'm picking Aaron Rodgers to beat Tyler Huntley. I mean, I think he should win. They're going to pull out all the stops. Still has to get his 500th touchdown pass. Didn't get it last week. And I mean, if he doesn't get it, you know, are you really going to walk away at $4.99? I don't know. I think Rodgers will get it in this game. Either way, either with Tua playing or not, he'll get his 500th touchdown pass. Just hope it's not in garbage time. I'm hoping that if he goes out, he goes out with the win. That's what I'm hoping. But again, I think that all depends on if Tua plays or not. And then I didn't talk about this game yet. So the Broncos and the Chiefs. So the Chiefs are resting their starters. The Broncos are actually 10.5-point favorites. There's snow supposedly in the forecast. I do lean towards the Broncos winning this game. I feel like the Chiefs could cover the 10.5. Carson Wentz is starting, and if you remember, he got that win last year when he played for the Rams. They got the win against the 49ers. So I'm going to lean towards the Broncos getting the win, but maybe the Chiefs cover, because that is a big number. So yeah, how it'll end up. So the Bengals are going to miss out. Broncos, I think, make it. I do think with the Bengals winning, I have the Bengals winning. Then the Steelers would drop down to the 6. Chargers would get the 5. I think the Lions win, so they'll get the 1. The Vikings will get the 5 in the NFC. I think the Bucs will win, so they'll win the NFC South. So how the playoffs will look based off of what I'm saying is you'll have the Lions as the 1 in the NFC, Eagles as the 2. Then as the 3, you'll have the Rams. 4, you'll have the Bucs. 5, the Vikings. 6, you'll have the Commanders. 7, you'll have the Packers. And then on the AFC side of things, the Chiefs will be the 1, the Bills will be the 2, Ravens 3, Texans 4, the Chargers 5, the Steelers 6, and then the Broncos as the 7th seed. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about the games upcoming for this weekend. How do you see some of these games playing out? You think the Falcons somehow find a way to get into the playoffs and win the division? Do you think the Bucs end up getting upset? I don't think so. How do you see the AFC wild card playing out? Do you think that the Bengals somehow find a way? Do you think that the Jets win and the Chiefs win with their backups to spoil the Broncos' season? Let me know in the comments. But yeah, that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video. And I hope everybody has a good weekend. So as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the games. And I'll talk to you guys on Monday. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn.